Okay, let's move on though, everybody. Are you ready? So this is what we were thinking about last time around, last 3 weeks. And now we're going to think about these two principles of design. And just like the first two at the top of the list, I like to think about using repetition and variation together, not separately, but together. Um, Repetition basically means you do something, meaning, let's say you use a color, a particular color, and then you do it again, and maybe a third time, or a fourth time, or a fifth time. Okay, so you're doing something and repeating it. I don't like to define a word by using the word, but I'm doing it. You do something and you do it over and over and over. Okay. Now, if you do it over and over and over and over again, and it's always the same, I think that leads to boredom. For me, the last thing I want to do is make a boring painting. That bores me while I'm making the painting, and it's probably going to bore my viewer. So I don't want that at all. Therefore, I like to use some variation as I repeat whatever it is, a color, a shape, a texture, a value. You can repeat also an edge, anything that I'm repeating, fine, but change it up at least a little bit. You don't have to change it up every single time, but at least once or twice, or are you ready? Let me just show you pictures. I think it's easier to explain these things with pictures. So this was a demo from back in 2021, and some of you who were in the Zoom classes back then might remember it. And I think this is a great example of repetition with variation. So what I'm doing here is I am repeating circles. There's loads of circles in this painting. The frying pan, the white part of the egg that's being cooked is a circle. The two egg yolks, I see 4 slices of tomato. They are all circles. So what I'm doing here is repeating circular shapes. But if you look at every one of those circles, every single one is different. Wow. The only one that, shall we say, is a perfect circle is the frying pan, because it was manufactured to be a perfect circle. The egg white is all ruffly and sort of broken up. The tomatoes all have slightly, some like this one right here, I particularly like this slice. It's got a straight edge and like 2 corners almost. So the circular shapes are varied. They're not all perfect circles. They're also varied, get this, in terms of their size. So, the frying pan's a really big circle. Here's the smallest. They're varied in terms of their color. I'm varying them in so many ways. I love looking at the two egg yolks, which are pretty similar in size because they were sold as large-sized eggs in the container, right? You buy a dozen large eggs and they're all meant to be the same size. So boom, they're about the same size and they're about the same oval shape, but I even varied the color from one to the next as well. So there's so much repetition in here, ac accompanied by variation. Without the variation, I think the painting would just be so much less interesting. You can even look at these little sausages in here, 1, 2, 3, and see that, okay, they're all, again, they were manufactured to all be, precisely, I don't know, let's say half an ounce in weight each, same length, same width, same cylindrical shape. Yep. But I've placed them all at different angles And so there's variation. That's the main way that I varied them. Oh, here's another way. Overlapped it by a tomato slice so the shape becomes varied on this one. How about that? Repetition with variation. More circles here in the sushi slices. And um, when I took a whole bunch of pictures of these sushi slices. I took them out of their container. This is grocery store sushi. The photo I used was not taken in a restaurant. Grocery store sushi brought home for dinner. I took the slices of sushi out of the container and I played with them, sort of. That sounds weird. Moved them around on the plate, changed their orientation. I probably changed the number of sushi slices that I was photographing. I was doing a lot of designing on this one, um, in the photographs that I was taking. But I will say that, there's lots of variation within these five circles in terms of the colors and the lines that are within them. And three of them, of course, have the saucy squiggles on them. And so there's a lot of variation, repetition with variation. The two chopsticks, okay, there are two very similar shapes, colors, values, edges. These are lines. We can think of them as lines, actually. You can think of them as shapes if you want, like long, skinny shapes as opposed to circular, or you can think of them as lines. And, I didn't put them down on the plate side by side. I crisscrossed them for more variation in their angles. And then I also deliberately pulled one or cropped one out of the right side of the painting, cropped the other one out of the bottom of the painting for more variation. Yowza. Repetition with variation. Here is an example of what I think is potentially maybe the most boring thing to paint in terms of repetition without variation, and that's a picket fence. I think that a brand new or freshly painted picket fence that's in good condition is one of the most boring, repetitive subjects to paint. Every picket is the same size, the same width, the same height. It has the same little point on the top. Every picket is precisely the same distance from the next one and the next one and the next. Oh my gosh. I, if we have picket fences, and I don't mean to be insulting anybody, if any of you have a picket fence around your property, I don't mean to insult you at all. If I had a picket fence around my yard, yeah, I'd want it to be freshly painted. I'd want it to be standing up straight. I would. But then if I painted it, I would paint it more like this, which has loads of variation in it, which I think alleviates the potential boring, non-varied repetitiveness that it inherently has. Am I making sense? If you look at this picket fence, you can see that every picket is different from the one that's next to it. It's a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, maybe a little closer, maybe a little farther away. I pulled up grasses in front of all of them to vary them as well. And the last pickets are melting right into the corners. This is a vignette. Um, and with great glee, with great glee, joy, I let those pickets designed those pickets to melt right out into the vignette corner. That was such a wonderful artistic thing to do. Okay, there's other repetition in this painting as well. If you look at the windows on this church, this is an old, like over 100-year-old Russian Orthodox church in Alaska on the Kenai Peninsula. It's a cute little church. Look at all the windows. We were talking about windows last week on the house that I was painting. Look how different the windows are. Many of them are the same size as other windows, like in the cupola, but I varied the colors and the values and the way I suggested the mullions. There's lots of variation along with the repetition. And the four gold domes on the rooftops are also varied. They're not all at the same height. They're not all the same distance between. And the one on the far right is backed up by something darker than it, as opposed to the other three. So there's loads of repetition with variation here. Here's another fence. I wanted to show you this because of the fence on this one. And the source photo that I used did have a certain wiggle in it, but I'm pretty sure that I enhanced that wiggle and gave it more of a wiggle. So there's more variation. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that I deliberately put, if you look at like at picket number one on the lower, the last one here where I'm gesturing, there's a skinny amount of space between it and number two, bigger between number three, then smaller between four, which is touching five. Do you see the way between the pickets, I'm varying the spaces or the intervals? So we've got repetition of similar shapes with variation in the intervals between them. And there's also, of course, variation in the sizes of these shapes to, as we go back towards the trees, they're getting shorter and skinnier to suggest that they're farther away, which they were. Repetition with variation. So in this case, the variation is helping to describe distance or depth, along with alleviating any potential boredom created by a lack of variation. And I think this is one of my favorite paintings to describe repetition with variation. This was also a demo a few years ago that some of you might remember. For those of you who were not here with me in, let's see, I'm looking at the date stamp, May 11th, 2022, 4 years ago. If you weren't here with me 4 years ago, I will tell you that to make this painting, I used about at least 5 or 6 photos that I took in our local science center museum kind of place. They've got this great big tank filled with sharks and stingrays and stuff. And so with the larger animals in this painting, pretty much every single one was plucked out of a different photo. And so I would look at the different photos and say, ooh, I like that shark. And then I would put that shark somewhere into the painting. Ooh, I like that stingray. And so we have repeated shapes in terms of, we can say, shapes of sharks. I don't know if that's really an artistic term, but I'll say it anyhow, shapes of sharks. But they're all different. You see the way they're all different? That's variation. Shapes of stingrays. Oh, yeah, but look, they're all different. They're flapping their wings in a different position. So there's loads and loads of repetition. And then there's loads and loads of variation along with it. Not only that, I did vary the values. So in some places the values are darker. So it's mostly blue. Oh, dominantly. Oh my gosh, we can go back to the last demo. Wow, this certainly is a dominantly blue painting, dominantly cool, but there is variation in the blue. It's not the same blue everywhere. It's a bit greener up here at the top. bit more purple and darker at the bottom. Oh my gosh. Repetition with variation. Look at the clothes on the clothesline. I was meant to suggest a lot of white towels or sheets on the clothesline. That's what I was trying to suggest. Um, I have, so it's repeated shapes. If you were to lay each one of these towels out on a flat surface, they'd all be rectangles, right? But because they're blowing in the breeze, I was able to either see different shapes in my source photo, more likely just made them up to suggest the rolling, flapping shapes. So there's loads of variation. I also varied the colors and I varied the edges. Let's just mention variation in edges right here. Look, they're a lot softer right here. As the laundry exits the right edge of the painting, the edges on the shapes are softening. Didn't want to create too much emphasis out at the edge of the painting. And this is one of those boxes that we seem to receive at least one of these every year around the holidays. And probably you do too. Maybe you even send these boxes to other people. And when I open them up, I'm always really impressed with how repetitive those pears are. They come from pear orchards, and those pear farmers have to pick out the perfect pears that are all the same repetitive size, shape, color. Then they send them to those two guys who are, I don't know, up maybe in New Hampshire, and they put them in the boxes and they arrive in your house and they are perfectly repetitive. So when I made my painting, my task was to vary these four shapes as much as I could. And so I did it by overlapping and underlapping, by cropping some of them off. This one on the right is cropped off, tucked beneath the edge of the box. This one, of course, is cropped in all different places by the crinkly paper. They do put that crinkly paper in the box. Some of them are usually, like one or two will be wrapped in white tissue paper or maybe gold paper. And you know why they do that? They do that for variation. They're thinking about design. Of course, once you unwrap them, the variation's no longer there. Anyhow, the variation's in my painting, repetition with variation. Let's talk about abstract paintings where I think repetition and variation are extremely important. And just speaking about abstract paintings, and in fact, on Sunday, I presented a demo to the Central Florida Watercolor Society um, on the subject that my new one of my new favorite subjects, bridging abstraction and realism. And so right now, this morning, I have abstraction very much on my mind. And I just want to say to you that I believe, this is my opinion now. My opinion is that abstract paintings require, must have good design. And it's almost more important in abstract paintings than it is in realistic paintings. That's not to say it's unimportant in realistic paintings, it certainly is. But abstract paintings can't rely on imagery to pull themselves together or to interest a viewer, to satisfy a viewer. There's no imagery, so they must be well designed. Okay. An important two important concepts in design are repetition and variation. So if you look at this abstract painting, there's a lot of repeated rectangular-ish shapes everywhere. I don't even have to move this cursor. I'll take it out. Um, all you have to do is look at this painting and you will see many, many rectangular-ish shapes, ish. So when I say rectangular-ish, that means they're all varied. I don't think anywhere there's a perfect rectangle anywhere. They're all different sizes, slightly different shapes. They might have a curved edge. They might have rounded corners. They might have a gradation within them, so the one end of it is completely lost, like this one down here. See, I couldn't keep my cursor out of the picture. Take it out again. So there's repetition with variation in all those rectangles. There's also a lot of use of lines in here. And along with the repeated lines, there's a lot of variation. So some of them are a little wider or narrower. The colors of the lines change. Here I go with the cursor again. Look at this one. The color of this line changes at least 3 times if you follow it from one end of it to another. Here's a line, and again, the color's changing right in there. Um, Also, if you check out in particular this section of little short horizontal-ish lines, look at the intervals between the lines. Some are closer together, some are farther apart. The angles are changing slightly. Yeah, repetition with variation. Here too.
Excuse me, Alexis, it's
Yes,
Margie.
Margie. Hi, Margie.
Hi.
Yes.
Um, was that based on the a realistic painting that you did, or was that just
Uh,
what you conjured?
I did this a few years ago. I think not. However, this one was based on a photograph of a stucco archway that I photographed in New Mexico many years ago. Um, I can dig up the photo that I used to make this one later if any of you are interested. I didn't put it into my plan for this morning, but I would be happy to share that with you. Um, so Margie, the answer for this one is no, this one is yes. Um, if the thing that I
Okay.
wanted,
Thanks. It was
you're most welcome. This one, I just want to point out primarily the repeated circles. We've got big circles, little circles. Some of the circles are pretty much just lines, I mean outlines. Some of them have additional shapes within them, like this one right here. It's a big circle, and then it's got 2 smaller circles within it and some other shapes. So the circles are all different. So we've got repetition with variation. I just want to I just want to let you in on a secret. This circle right here at the top, 1, 2, and 3, the way I made them, if you want to know, I took um uh uh the cardboard roll in the middle of a roll of toilet paper. I took that cardboard roll and um put it on my palette. I put the end of it on my palette, which had paint on it, and I kind of rubbed it around in the paint. So the end of the cardboard roll had paint on it, and then I went boom, and I pushed it on here, and it made a circle. So this is the actual size and shape of the cardboard roll from toilet paper. Then I did it here, but I kind of squeezed the roll a little bit. I didn't want it to be perfectly repetitive. So the second one, I squeezed the roll a little bit so it's not a perfect circle. See, this one's pretty much a perfect circle. This one's a little more oval because I squeezed it. And this one, man, I squeezed it a lot and it came out almost slightly, you might even say triangular-ish because I squeezed it even more because I didn't want the repetitive circles to be completely unvaried. Okay, so that's it for my discussion about repetition with variation. I hope that was interesting. I hope that gave you something to think about. Okay? So I really do think it's important. So so then I started thinking, what's a good subject for illustrating and using these two concepts? And I came up with the subject of flowers. Um, if you're looking at a whole bunch of flowers, particularly if it's the same kind of flower, if you're looking at a bouquet, let's say from the florist, and it has eight kinds of flowers, it's not going to be as easy to see the repetition. But if you're looking at a batch of prickly pear cactus or a bunch of poppies growing all together, you're going to see lots and lots of repetition. Repetition of shape, repetition of size, repetition of color, repetition of value. Yeah, got it? You could have like little soldier poppies all lined up in your painting.